This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
All right, and welcome to the GSMC Sports Podcast. This episode is brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network, and as always, I'm your host, Jesse Tapia, and for today's show, for this first segment, we're going to be starting off with some Minnesota Vikings talk. All right, we're going to talk a little about their game with the Saints coming up this weekend. I think it's on Sunday. I can't remember exactly, but we'll be talking about that. All right, talking about, their future in this postseason, what they can truly achieve, are they Super Bowl contenders or anything like that. But we're also going to talk about what they do next year. Do you bring back Case Keenum, or do you make Teddy Bridgewater the starter? All right, so we're going to talk about that. After that segment, we'll be talking about the NBA games from last night, talk about the Kings and Lakers game a little bit, talk about how the Kings just really aren't looking good at all. Talk about how the Lakers are looking better with Lonzo out there. Talk about the rest of the games that were played yesterday, which was Tuesday night. We'll also talk about the games going on Wednesday night also. And then for that third segment, we're going to spend it on some teams who currently aren't in the postseason. We're going to spend a lot of it talking about the Seahawks, their little whole mini rebuild thing that they're going through in order to keep their good team going. Because every team every good team goes through this little stage where, you know what, it's time to get rid of some people in order to keep the train moving. So we'll talk about that. Like I said, we'll talk about a couple of other teams if we have time. And then for that fourth segment, we'll talk about pretty much anything else going on in sports. So let's get into it. Minnesota Vikings playing the New Orleans Saints on Sunday, I believe. Don't quote me on that. It might be Saturday. Let me see. I got it up right here. Actually, on Sunday at 1:40 p.m. Pacific time, 4:40 p.m. Eastern time. Actually, we got good games on Sunday. It's going to be Jacksonville versus Pittsburgh and then New Orleans versus Minnesota. Saturdays where, they really don't have that many good games. But as far as the Minnesota Vikings and Saints game goes, I mean, when I was doing this title, obviously when you pull up the podcast, it says Case Keenum or Teddy Bridgewater for next year. I had to make that clear because obviously Case Keenum is the guy going forward in the playoffs. There's no reason for Mike Zimmer or anyone to take him out and put Teddy in there. I remember when Teddy Bridgewater came back off of his injury and was activated, people were asking, do you start Teddy Bridgewater or do you start Case Keenum? That wasn't too smart of a question. It should have been Case Keenum the entire time, and like I said, the question shouldn't even been brought up. I understand what Teddy Bridgewater did for his first couple of years, and then he had that bad knee injury, but Case Keenum has been the guy so far this season. All right, but as far as the Saints and Vikings game goes, I think that the Vikings have a really good chance at pulling that one out. They're going to be at home, and it's going to be a first for most of those players. I can't remember the last time the Vikings were in playoffs. I think it was when did Teddy Bridgewater take him to the playoffs one year? I don't think he did. Let me see if I can pull it up on my laptop as I'm talking about it. But yeah, the last time I truly remember was when Adrian Peterson brought him to the playoffs that one year. I think with Christian Ponder as his quarterback. Man, Christian Ponder. Florida State does not, how do you say, develop good quarterbacks for the NFL. I'll say that much, except for Jameis Winston. But Jameis Winston really needs to figure it out. But I don't think Teddy Bridgewater in his first 2 years took the Vikings to the playoffs at all. But I mean, now when you got Case Keenum out there, I mean, like I said, going back to the Saints and Vikings game, Vikings have a good chance because, like I said, Case Keenum's been playing well all year. All right, and then to stop the Saints, obviously you need a great defense. Minnesota has that. You need to be able to limit Alvin Kamara and Mark Ingram, and I think Minnesota can do that because you've got Anthony Barr and the rest of those linebackers out there. And like I said on the last couple of podcasts, the biggest thing that hurt Carolina against the Saints wasn't the fact that Kamara and Ingram hurt them because they didn't. They did well to limit those two. It's the fact that the secondary just didn't play well at all, and Michael Thomas and Ted Ginn both went for big games. I think both had over 110 yards, and like I said, Ted Ginn brought in a touchdown, and I think Michael Thomas had like around 130 yards, I believe. So they both had big games, but that's not gonna, like, Michael Thomas always has a chance to have a good game. Doesn't matter who he's playing against. Ted Ginn, I mean, he's gonna play as well as he can against whatever kind of secondary is out there. If it's a bad secondary, then Ted Ginn's going to have all the opportunity in the world to run a deep route and catch one of those, like how he did against Carolina, because on that play, that's where most of his yards came from. I think that was like an 81-yard touchdown right there. So, I mean, that's not going to be happening against Minnesota secondary because they're locked down right now. You got a guy like Harrison Smith playing safety and then Xavier Rhodes on the outside playing cornerback. So, I'm really not too worried about Minnesota's defense in this one. I think they are going to be able to do well. And they are going to be able to stop the Saints and probably pull out the win. So if they do that, then you're going to be playing a team. Either it's going to be Philly or the Falcons. And I think Minnesota could beat the Falcons or Philly. And like this is all kind of leading up to the Teddy Bridgewater Case Keenum. All right. So yeah, say they face off a team like Philly or the Falcons. I mean, they could beat the Falcons easily. I feel just because that defense is played well. Like just it all comes down to Minnesota's defense really. Like we know that Case Keenum, that offense is going to play well. But if the defense is out there shutting them down, then really no one can beat Minnesota, and I think that they can beat Philly easily, and Atlanta's going to be a little bit more of a challenge because, I mean, like I said, so far this season, Atlanta just really hasn't played well on offense, but come playoff time, Julio Jones shows up every game. He has his best games in the playoffs year after year, so, I mean, it's going to be difficult to contain him and limit him, but, I mean, if Minnesota were to beat, say, Philly or Atlanta, boom, they're in the Super Bowl. And let's say, and I'm not making predictions or anything like that. Like these are my final predictions or anything. I'm just trying to build it up, you know. All right, so let's say they end up winning the Super Bowl. Now, here we are to our question. All right, Case Keenum is a Super Bowl winner. Do you make him the starting quarterback next year? Because I'm pretty sure Case Keenum is going to be I'm pretty sure Case Keenum's a free agent after this season. All right, so let's say Minnesota wins Super Bowl with Case Keenum as their quarterback, and Case Keenum has a good postseason. Do you bring him back over Teddy Bridgewater? Or do you just say, you know what, Teddy's our guy now. Thanks, Case. Good luck to wherever you go. I say go with Teddy Bridgewater. All right, because let me pull up Teddy's stats real quick. All right, so in his rookie year and his second year, okay, he started 13 games his first year, 16 his second year, and let me see. All right, so his completion percentage both years was around 65%. He threw for almost 3,000 yards in his first year. Second year, he threw for over 3,000. He had 3,231 yards. All right. Threw 14 touchdowns both years. First year had 12 interceptions. Only threw 9 the next year. And let's see. Yeah, he didn't have much of an offensive line, too. I'm seeing his sack numbers. He got sacked 39 times his first year, 44 times his second year. All right. So let's look at Case Keenum's stats in the NFL. Never really been a starting quarterback. I remember last year when he was with the Rams, he started 10 games. Let's see how he did with the Rams. Only had 9 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. All right, and then this year, he's had a 67% completion percentage, almost 68. He has 67.6 right now. Threw for over 3,500 yards in the regular season. Threw for 22 touchdowns, only 7 picks, and was only sacked 22 times. So obviously that offensive line is a whole lot better than what it was with when Teddy Bridgewater's out there. All right, and I can't, like, as much as Case Keenum has played well so far this season, I still can't trust him next season. Yeah, next season I still can't trust him, even if he were to go out and win a Super Bowl. You want to know why? Because Minnesota Vikings offensive coordinator Pat Shurmur might leave and take a head coaching job somewhere, and if he does that, then I really have no faith in Case Keenum playing well next year, because I feel like that's been the biggest thing too, because I saw a couple of ESPN reports saying that if Pat Shurmur were to leave and go coach somewhere, then he'd take Case Keenum with him. All right. Obviously, that tells me that Pat Shurmur is the reason why Case Keenum has played so well, and he knows what it takes to keep Case Keenum from playing well. And even with all that, even if Pat Shurmur were to stay, I'm still taking Teddy Bridgewater, because you know what? You're going to have to pay Case Keenum a lot of money, because he's going to win a Super Bowl. He's a Super Bowl winner, all right? Case Keenum, like, he's already set. He's already going to get a decent contract next season, unless he just completely blows it against the Saints, which I don't think he will. I think they're going to be able to pull out the win. So for him to get like a decent sized contract, all he's got to do is play well. That's it. You don't have to go out and win a Super Bowl or anything like that. Just play well. And I think he will. And as far as if I'm the Vikings, Jim, I'm not giving Case Keenum that contract. All right, we know what Teddy Bridgewater can be. We're not sure if we know what Case Keenum, if Case Keenum can consistently be this year after year. This is his first good year. He's been in the league since 2013. His first season with this Texans, he played 8 games. Let's see, only had 9 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. Next year, he's with the Rams, but didn't play a game. Went back to the Texans, and that same year, only started in 2 games. Then in 2015, goes back to the Rams, played in 6 games, had 4 touchdowns, 1 pick. Can't really do much with that sample size. Next year, he starts 10 games. Like I said, threw for 9 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, gets benched for Jared Goff. And then all of a sudden with Minnesota, he's out here throwing for 22 touchdowns, only 7 interceptions, and more than 3,500 yards. This is one good year for Case Keenum. And I understand that he could be a good quarterback going forward, but I feel with the team he's got right now, like Stephon Diggs, Adam Thielen, Kyle Rudolph, you got Dalvin Cook, who's going to be back next year. This year you had Latavius Murray and Jerick McKinnon playing well when Cook blew out his knee. And then you get that solid defense to play behind. I mean, you don't have to be that good of a quarterback to succeed in a type of team like this. You don't have to be that great or anything like that. You just have to pretty much be a game manager, an Alex Smith type. All right, don't lose us the game. Don't turn the ball over. And I'd rather make Teddy Bridgewater my guy, okay, since he's been there. I don't got to pay Teddy a bunch of money, all right? Just like I'm going to have to pay Case Keenum if he wins the Super Bowl. So I'm saying, you know what? Thank you. You did your job. Go get paid somewhere else. We're going to stick with Teddy. And as far as Teddy Bridgewater goes, he has the tools to be a solid quarterback. I'll tell you that much. Teddy Bridgewater can be successful with the guys that I just named, like Stephon Diggs, Thielen, Rudolph, and that defense. All right, this team's going to be dangerous when Dalvin Cook comes back next year. I mean, hopefully he comes back next year and is fine. I know it's going to be hard for him to come back on off of a torn ACL injury, especially as a running back. Adrian Peterson did it, but, I mean, not too many people are like Adrian Peterson, so we're going to see. But, yeah, if I'm deciding between the two, I'm going Teddy Bridgewater all the way. I just can't buy into the Case Keenum hype after this year, especially if Pat Shurmur leaves. If Pat Shurmur leaves, then I'm done with Case Keenum. Teddy, you're our guy. And even if he stays, Teddy should be the guy. It comes down to it being a business, all right? Do you want to pay the guy that's old? Like, how old is... All right, so yeah, Case Keenum, he's 29 right now. He's born in February. He's going to turn 30 in February. All right, let me see if I can pull up Teddy Bridgewater's age right here. Teddy Bridgewater is 25, will not turn 26 till next November. You're going to tell me you're going to pay the 30-year-old quarterback a bunch of money. Probably going to have to give him 4 years at least. 4 years at least. Let's see, what's the average salary for a quarterback right now? Probably around $15 million. Like $12 to $15 million. You're going to give him 4 years and $12 to $15 million. You're really going to do that, Minnesota, for a 30-year-old quarterback? All right. Joe Flacco won a Super Bowl. And got a big contract because of it. I always say that the worst thing to happen to the Baltimore Ravens was for Joe Flacco to go out and win a Super Bowl. Joe Flacco has not played well at all since he won that Super Bowl. He got paid, and I'm not saying he got paid and like took it easy or anything like that. Joe Flacco's not that type of player, I don't think. But he got paid and just hasn't looked good ever since. This Ravens team almost made the playoffs because their defense was playing well and because they had a solid running game. It wasn't because Joe Flacco was leading them there. He was playing all right, but it wasn't great quarterback play or anything like that. It was average. All right, Joe Flacco has been at the maximum average since the Super Bowl win, and most of the time below average. All right, and I think the same thing could happen with Case Keenum. I mean, Trent Dilfer won a Super Bowl with the Ravens in 2000 because of a good defense. All right, Case Keenum, could be a good quarterback. He might be a good quarterback. He's not a great quarterback, but I think he might just be a product of the people around him, product of the coaching staff, product of the defense, product of the offensive guys surrounding him. All right, like it's just weird for a guy to be pretty much just a below average quarterback, like at the max his entire career. All of a sudden comes in, plays well, and then now we're thinking, are we going to keep him and give him a decent sized contract? I'm not doing that. Teddy Bridgewater's younger. He has more upside. We know what Case Keenum is, or at least we think we know what Case Keenum is. We're not sure if he could replicate it next year. So, again, if I'm choosing between Case Keenum or Teddy Bridgewater, I'm going Teddy Bridgewater 10 times out of 10. All right, give me the young 25-year-old quarterback who probably still needs to develop a little bit more and, just like develop more over the guy who's 30 years old. And if I give him this contract, I'm not sure if he's going to be able to replicate the same performance he's put in this season. So that's all I got to say about that. Next up, we're going to be talking some NBA, talking about the games that went on last night. Going to make my picks for the games tonight, and then we're going to talk some more NFL in the third segment. And like I said in the fourth one, we'll be talking about anything else going on in sports. So stay tuned, and we'll be right back.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines. They got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, and welcome back to the GSMC Sports Podcast. In that last segment, we did something a little different. Usually we start off with like NFL scores, or like the biggest NFL story, the NBA scores. We're going to be doing NBA scores from Tuesday night in this segment right now. I'm going to make my picks too later if we have more time. If not, I'll just push that to the fourth segment. But that last segment, we talked about Case Keenum and Teddy Bridgewater. Didn't talk about if the Vikings needed to start Teddy Bridgewater this postseason. Talked about what the Vikings do next season, like particularly if they win the Super Bowl or anything like that. All right. Even if they don't win a Super Bowl, they're going to have a little question on their hands of whether or not, what do we do? Do we keep Case Keenum and sign him to a little nice contract? Or do we go with Teddy Bridgewater? I said go with Teddy Bridgewater, even if the Vikings were to win the Super Bowl with Case Keenum, all right? Because you never know if Pat Shurmur is going to leave for a head coaching job. And even if he does, do you want to pay the 30-year-old Case Keenum? I said he's turning 30 in February. And yeah, do you want to pay the 30-year-old Case Keenum about 4 years at least? Going to be around $12 to $15 million a year. Do you want to do that for the guy who's only had one solid season, but other than that has been a below-average quarterback his entire career? Or do you want to keep the guy and make him your starter, the 25-year-old Teddy Bridgewater, who before his knee injury showed that he had the tools of becoming a good quarterback, even with a terrible offensive line? Obviously now the offensive line is playing a lot better because Case Keenum was only sacked 22 times this year rather than Teddy Bridgewater being sacked 44 times and 39 times in his first 2 years. And like I said, you keep Teddy Bridgewater, okay, and his knee is all healed up. He's had 2 years to recover. Okay, you got Dalvin Cook coming back off of injury next year. If he doesn't play well, you still got Jerick McKinnon and Latavius Murray. You've already shown this season that you could win with those two at your running back position. All right. Then you got Stephon Diggs, you got Adam Thielen, you got Kyle Rudolph, you got that young, solid defense. All right, Teddy Bridgewater could succeed with that. Case Keenum has showed it. Okay, give me the 25-year-old with more upside than the 30-year-old with. What do we? Is he going to be good next year? Should we pay him this money, not knowing if he could be this good next year? So yeah, I'd take Teddy. And obviously, if they were to keep Case Keenum, they'd have to trade Teddy. So I mean, that upside right there is you're going to get some picks for him. But like I said, Teddy Bridgewater should be the starter for the Vikings next year. But we'll see how it all ends up. We got to see how the Vikings do in the playoffs. So let's talk some basketball right now. How about those Miami Heat? Beat the Toronto Raptors yesterday in Toronto, 90-89. Josh Richardson only had 6 points. He shot 3 of 13. Not a good game from him. Hassan Whiteside had 13 points, 15 rebounds. Kelly Olynyk only put in 14 points. Goran Dragic had 24 points, 12 rebounds. He shot 10 of 21. And Bam Adebayo, the rookie out of Kentucky, excuse me, I had a cough right there. The rookie out of Kentucky had 16 points, 15 rebounds, shot 8 of 14 in 33 minutes of play. And Wayne Ellington off the bench brought in 15 points, scored 15 points. As for Toronto, Serge Ibaka, before he was ejected, him and James Johnson Both got into it. Got into like a little scuffle right here. James Johnson threw 2 punches, and I think Serge Ibaka tried sneaking in one, but after James Johnson hit him twice, Serge Ibaka really wanted no part of that. Both were ejected, but before Ibaka got ejected, he brought in 11 points, 5 rebounds. Jonas Valanciunas had 8 points. No Kyle Lowry in this one. So his replacement Wright had 13 points, 7 rebounds, 4 assists, and DeMar DeRozan had 25 points. He shot 10 of 29, so not a good shooting game from him. But let's talk about the Miami Heat for a second. All right, obviously right now, Hassan Whiteside is their starting center. Okay, they're playing well. They're 23-17. I think they're currently the 5th seed in the East. Let me pull up the standings right here. Yeah, they're currently 5th in the East, or 4th in the East now. They jumped up ahead of the Wizards. Both got the same records, but I think Miami Heat has a current tiebreaker over them. But my question is, you got Bam Adebayo playing well. Do you keep him coming off the bench and have Hassan Whiteside as your starter? Or do you try and get something for Whiteside at the trade deadline and make Adebayo your starter? All right. I think it's too early to make Bam Adebayo your starting center, and to get rid of Whiteside, but I think that's going to be a move that Miami's going to have to make eventually. All right, and I know it sounds kind of crazy because Hassan Whiteside, I mean, he isn't the best center in the league by any means, but he's up there with the top guys, probably top 5, maybe top 10. But I trust Eric Spoelstra enough to where he can develop whoever he brings in, and he can develop the players that he's got now, because like he doesn't have great, like extremely talented players or anything like that, at least on paper. I mean, if you were to look at this team, you'd be like, oh, there's no superstars. Like Hassan Whiteside, like, yeah, he's a really good center, but I don't think he's like a DeMarcus Cousins, Anthony Davis, or what else is a DeAndre Jordan type of center. All right. He did have those good couple of years with the Heat, and he's still playing well and bringing in good production, but he's just not on that same level, and I don't think he ever will be. So if I'm the Heat, like I said, I mean, it's too early right now to make this kind of decision, so we got to see as the season progresses. I think the trade deadline has got to be sometime early February, maybe late January, I think. I can't remember exactly. It's around the All-Star break, I think. But, oh yeah, I think it is like right after the All-Star break. I remember last year DeMarcus Cousins got traded like at the All-Star game, so I remember that. But, yeah, like I said, I mean, I trust Eric Spoelstra enough to whoever they were to get for Hassan Whiteside, whether it be a couple of players or maybe picks. He could use those picks, bring in some players from the draft, and I'm sure he could develop them nicely. Eric Spoelstra is one of the best coaches in the league. I'll take Brad Stevens at 1. Give me Greg Popovich at 2. And then at number 3, you can go Steve Kerr or Eric Spoelstra. All right, Steve Kerr, he's a good coach, but he might also just be a product too, like a big product of the players that he's coaching. All right, he's got Kevin Durant out there. I know he's only had him since last year. That's all right. The year before, he had Steph Curry, Draymond Green, Klay Thompson. All right. Steve Kerr's a good coach, but how good would he be if he didn't have this crazy roster? All right. So you know what? I'll put Eric Spoelstra at number 3. Like I said, I like the way he develops players, and he always has a team that competes. I think he had his first bad year when LeBron left, but other than that, I mean, they've still been pretty competitive ever since. So, yeah, if I'm the Heat, you got to start thinking about, you know what? We got this young up-and-coming rookie in Bam Adebayo, and he's looking like he's starting to develop pretty well and starting to really speed up his process of becoming a good player. So, you know what? What do we do with Hassan Whiteside? Because Hassan Whiteside is not the future at center for the Heat. All right? They got Bam. All I'm saying is, you know what? Think about it. Right now, it'd be too early to do it, but they might have to trade Hassan Whiteside to see what they could get for him to bring Bam in as a starter and pretty much start this young, youthful team. So we'll see how it all goes. But for the next game, let me pull it up. We got the Portland Trailblazers. They headed into Oklahoma City, faced off with the Thunder, and the Portland Trailblazers won this one 117-106. Joseph Nurkic had 20 points, 8 rebounds, shot 8 of 15. Shabazz Napier had 21 points, 5 rebounds, shot 5 of 10. Shabazz Napier, if you remember when LeBron James was on the Heat, LeBron wanted the Heat to draft Napier. That's exactly what they did. I think LeBron left right after that, and Napier really didn't become like a good player or anything like that. It was just an extra player on a team, you know. But now with Portland, he's been playing extremely well. So I mean, this is a good spot for him. And Portland's needed someone like this too to step up, because Damian Lillard didn't play yesterday at all. I think he was hurt or just needed a day's rest. But I mean, for the Portland Trailblazers to beat the Thunder, who the Thunder have been playing well so far the last couple of weeks, and for them to beat them like they did by 11, I mean, that's pretty encouraging if you're the Trailblazers, because usually you need a guy like Lillard and McCollum in order to beat a team like this. But when you got Napier out here playing well, I mean, like I said, it's just encouraging. And speaking of CJ McCollum, he had 27 points, 7 assists. He shot 11 of 19 in that game. As for the Thunder, Carmelo Anthony had 19 points, 6 rebounds, shot 8 of 17, only 3 of 9 from the three-point line. Paul George, 22 points, 4 rebounds, shot 8 of 15 from the field, 5 of 9 from the three-point line. Russell Westbrook had 22 points, 12 assists, 9 rebounds. He shot 7 of 20. And Terrence Ferguson came up with the goose egg in 30 minutes. 0 points, 0 assists, did have 2 rebounds, but only took 2 shots in that game and didn't hit any of them. The Thunder, they are a pretty difficult team to predict. I'll tell you that much. We don't know yet what the Thunder are. They started off the season poorly. They started off the season probably as bad as you could. Then, like I said, the last couple of weeks, they've been picking it up, playing well. I think as of right now, let me pull it up. They should be the 5th seed in the West right now. Or the 6th seed now. Portland with that win jumped them. So yeah, right now the Thunder are the 6th seed. If the playoffs ended today, I love doing that. If the playoffs ended today, they'd be playing the Spurs in the playoffs. First round. That's a sweep. Alright. The Thunder really, in order to make this work, either need to pull off a trade, whether it's bringing someone in or getting rid of someone like Paul George, because they can't trade Melo, I don't think. He's still got years on his contract. Paul George is going to be a free agent this year, so you could give him up maybe to a guy like the Lakers, or a team like the Lakers, and bring in a guy like Jordan Clarkson or something like that, maybe even a Julius Randle type. I think Julius Randle would be a good fit on this Oklahoma City Thunder team, actually. If you were to get rid of Paul George, you get rid of Paul George, you move back Carmelo Anthony back to the 3. All right, then you got Westbrook, Ferguson, Anthony, Randle, and Steven Adams. I think that would be a better team than what they got now, to be honest, even with Paul George there. Because Randle's going to allow Carmelo Anthony to take more shots and be more comfortable. He doesn't have to really cater to Paul George to get his shots too. Russell Westbrook could get his also. And Randle is just going to be there, and he can produce too. He doesn't need the ball constantly to produce. So I think trading Paul George and getting a guy like Randle back, and along with the first-round pick, would be a solid trade for the Oklahoma City Thunder. I'm not sure if they'll do that, but I think that'd be a smart move for them. But they really got to figure something out, because they can't be an inconsistent team heading into the playoffs, facing off with a team like the Spurs, the Rockets, or the Warriors. If they want to have any chance of making it to the second round, they're going to need at least the 5th seed so they can face off with a team like Minnesota or possibly Portland. But we'll see how it all ends up. As for the third game of the night, we had the Orlando Magic heading into Dallas. The Mavericks won that one 114-99. The Magic, for their stats, I don't know why they didn't start Aaron Gordon yesterday, but he came off the bench. He had 19 points, 8 rebounds, shot 6 of 16. Mo Spates came in with 13 points, 10 rebounds off the bench. Let's see, who else did anything on the Magic? Really, no one played well, actually. Elfrid Payton only had 8 points. He played 23 minutes, so, I mean, it could just be a product of him being blown out the entire time. Evan Fournier had 12 points, shot 6 of 14 in 35 minutes, 0 of 4 from the three-point line, brought in 4 rebounds, and Jonathan Simmons had 3 points, 1 rebound, 2 assists, shot 1 of 7 in that one. As for those Dallas Mavericks, you had Dirk Nowitzki with 20 points, 3 rebounds. Nice game for Dirk right there. Shot 6 of 13. Harrison Barnes had 15 points, 6 rebounds, shot 5 of 9. Dennis Smith Jr., 20 points, 7 rebounds, 3 assists, shot 8 of 19. He's really starting to play well. And Wesley Matthews had 16 points, 5 rebounds. He shot 5 of 10. The Magic are a team that kind of has disappointed me so far this season. Started off the season hot, didn't think they'd be able to sustain it, but thought they'd be able to be a team who could maybe compete for the 8th seed, but they just don't have it. I'm not sure if they're just missing one more piece or if these young players just can't play together right now. But they're kind of like the Kings. Got a bunch of young players but just simply aren't competing with the bad teams even. So we'll see how it all ends up as the season goes. And as for the final game of the night, I was watching this one. We had the Sacramento Kings facing off with the Los Angeles Lakers. Lakers won this game 99-86. Lakers were up big in this one. They were up by 20-plus points in the first quarter early on, too. And I left to go get something to eat, come back, and boom, the game's tied. Kings are down by 1. I think the score was 33-32 when I got back in the end of the first quarter, I think it was. So, I mean, the Kings were in it, but, I mean, the Lakers just pulled away as the game progressed. But let me get into the stats real quick before I give my total thoughts. De'Aaron Fox had 15 points in this one. He shot 6 of 16 in this game, 3 of 5 from the three-point line. Buddy Hield had 13 points, shot 4 of 11. Willie Cauley-Stein only had 8 points in that one, had 4 rebounds. Zach Randolph, 7 points, 12 rebounds. He shot 2 of 12. Not a good game from him. Vince Carter played 22 minutes in this game. I love seeing Vince Carter play for the Kings because it's like, I don't know, it's kind of weird. Like now he's pretty much like, he's an older guy, obviously. He's like 41 years old, so you got to see him use his fundamentals and stuff. And the guy can still dunk. He had 7 points, shot 2 of 7, also had 3 rebounds. Did have a dunk, like I said. And then Bogdanovich finally figured out. The one that plays for Indiana is Bojan Bogdanovich. This one is Bogdanovich. He had 19 points, 4 assists, shot 7 of 13. The Kings might have something with him there. They really just need to develop him more, but I think that might eventually end up being the Kings' best player on their team. As for those Lakers, Julius Randle, 22 points, 14 rebounds, 6 assists, shot 8 of 13 in that one, played 30 minutes, good game from him. Brandon Ingram had 15 points, 5 rebounds, he shot 6 of 9, only played 24 minutes in this one. Brook Lopez, 18 points, only 3 rebounds, shot 6 of 9 in 22 minutes. Lonzo Ball played 37 minutes, he had 5 points, 11 rebounds, 11 assists, he shot 2 of 10. He's going to end up being, I think, a Lonzo or a Rajon Rondo type of player. I think that eventually he might be able to develop his shooting a little bit better, but as of right now, it's looking like his ceiling is Rajon Rondo, and that's not bad. Rajon Rondo, I mean, at one point was one of the best point guards in the league, but I mean, that was, I don't know if Lonzo Ball could ever reach that height when Rondo was with the Celtics, but I think he is going to be, he's going to be a solid point guard that makes players around him better by the way he plays. So he does have a future in the NBA, just not sure it's like a superstar type of player, but who knows. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope had 16 points, 4 rebounds, and he shot 5 of 11 in this one in 33 minutes. All right, so the Kings, they, like I said, they're just like the Orlando Magic. They have a bunch of young players, and it looked promising in the beginning of the season, and you just want to see them compete. That's it. And so far this season, they just haven't been able to compete. They just haven't played well. And I'm not sure if it's because these guys are too young or if it has to do with coaching or anything like that, but they really need to start figuring it out. They've been rebuilding since around 2006. I think it's the last time they made the playoffs. Since then, they just really have been the laughingstock of the NBA, have made questionable front office moves, questionable drafting moves, questionable signings, and just questionable coaching decisions. Everything's been questionable about the Kings, all right? They really need to start figuring it out, and showing that, you know what, they have a direction that they're heading in and that they can compete. Because right now they can't compete. So like I said, they just need to figure it out. But that's going to wrap it up for NBA talk right there. I said I was going to do my picks, but we're running out of time. We're going to push that to the 4th segment. Next up, we're going to be talking about the Seattle Seahawks, what they're currently doing, what they need to do, and maybe we'll talk about a couple different teams in the NFL that currently aren't in the playoffs and talk about what they need to do also. So stay tuned, and we'll be right back.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, and welcome back to the GSMC Sports Podcast. That last segment, we went over the NBA games from last night and talked a little bit about each team too. We talked about how the Miami Heat, what they need to do at center. I mean, they got Hassan Whiteside, but they also have Bam Adebayo, the rookie, coming off the bench. Eventually, I think that's going to be the true center of the Heat going forward eventually. Bam. All right, they might need to trade Hassan Whiteside at the deadline in order to get like maybe a first-round pick back, a couple of first-round picks back, and pretty much build this team more going forward. I'm not sure what they're going to do, but maybe that's a decision that they're going to have to make eventually. Talked about the Thunder, how their inconsistency might get them swept in the playoffs in the first round. They need to get at least the 5th seed or the 4th seed, so they end up playing a team like Minnesota or Portland, but we'll see. They lost their game to the Trailblazers. Trailblazers won that one 117 to 106, like I said. Magic and Kings, those are just two young teams right now who just can't compete even with the bad teams of the league, so they really need to figure it out. And talking about Lonzo Ball, and talked about how his ceiling might be Rajon Rondo, but that's not a bad thing. Like I said, Rondo at one point was one of the best point guards in the league, so I mean, maybe Lonzo Ball eventually could elevate his play to being like that. I mean, Rondo has never really been a good shooter. He's always made the people around him better. Was always a good rebounder and always came up with a bunch of assists. So that's what Lonzo needs to be right there. But we'll see how it all ends up. As for this segment, we're going to talk a lot about the Seattle Seahawks, and we're going to talk a little bit about the rest of the NFC West teams, since I feel that if they have to, what they do ties into what the Seahawks need to do. So let's just get into it right now. Obviously, we saw this season, Seahawks did make the playoffs, finished 9-7, second in the NFC West. All right, and whoa, did the Arizona Cardinals really finish 8-8? I'm looking at the standings right now, sorry, but man, Bruce Arians is one of the, well, obviously was, now he's retired. Bruce Arians was one of the best coaches in the league. If he got the Arizona Cardinals to 8-8, that's crazy. All right, yeah, so now this makes it all even better. All right, so let's talk about the Seahawks. Like I said, finished 9-7. They didn't make the playoffs. That's inexcusable. This team with Russell Wilson, guys like Doug Baldwin, and obviously they did have some problems on defense. Like they said, they lost Richard Sherman, lost Cliff Averill, lost Cam Chancellor, and like from what Pete Carroll's been saying, it's not looking like Cam or Cliff Averill is going to be back, obviously because of the extent of their injuries, okay? So obviously they have to make a bunch of changes, and I've been saying this all season long, or actually like, towards the end of the season, when we pretty much saw that Seattle just wasn't who they've been. All right, and you know what? They're doing that. They fired their offensive coordinator, and it's looking like they might get rid of their defensive coordinator too, or just let him leave to somewhere else, just to just for a change of scenery, you know. And I think that'd be best for both teams right now, for both people right now, because the Seahawks, like they really. Every good team goes through this little point where it's either your time as a top team in the NFL is coming to an end, or you can make the right changes and continue that. All right, and Seattle's hit this point. That's this offseason right here. All right, they started off by getting rid of their offensive coordinator. I thought that was a good move. Like I said, I think they just need to start fresh and bring in some new guys, because that offense, I think, let me see the stat right here. All right, so Seattle's offense always started off slow in the first half. They were 30th in yards in the first half with 133 and 31st in points, only scoring 6 in the first half, like I said. Second half, they ranked number 1 in yards, in second half yards with 196, almost 197, and then they ranked first in points with 14. All right, obviously, Pete Carroll felt that was a problem as far as execution and scheme, because that's why he got rid of his offensive coordinator, I feel. Okay? And then as far as the defense goes, I mean, the defense doesn't scare anyone anymore. I know they had a lot of injuries and they got to fix up some holes on that defense, but the defense, like even when Richard Sherman was out there, just didn't scare you. All right? There was a point in the last few years where if you had to go play in Seattle, you knew you had no chance. That's not the case anymore, because you know what? The Rams went over there and they blew Seattle out of the water. I think they beat them, what was it, like 33-7 or something like that? Just had no chance. All right? And now I've been seeing that Seattle wants Steve Sarkisian from Atlanta's offensive coordinator to come be the offensive coordinator for them. That's a step back. I don't know why they would do that. That makes no sense to me. Look at what Atlanta's offense was last year without Sarkisian. All right, obviously Kyle Shanahan was out there. We'll talk about him a little bit because it's all like pretty much ties into the Seahawks. All right, and then look what Atlanta's offense was this year with Steve Sarkisian. They were okay, above average, but they weren't what they should be. All right, you got guys like Tevin Coleman, Devontae Freeman, Julio Jones, MVP quarterback Matt Ryan on your team. All right, you got solid number 2 in Mohamed Sanu, and Taylor Gabriel is a good little wild card person on the offense too. You can do whatever he wants. All right, and Steve Sarkisian managed to make this offense look a lot worse than what it was than how it was last year. And it just doesn't make sense to me for a team who already can't run the ball, all right, doesn't have top receivers or anything like that. Like Doug Baldwin is, I guess you could say, a top receiver. He's a second-tier receiver, maybe upper third tier possibly, but he's like, I'll go second-tier receiver, all right? They said you don't have a solid running game. Russell Wilson led them in rush yards. He had 586 yards, led the team. That's not good. All right, and like I said, you got a bunch of. I just pretty much talk about the offense real quick. Just you need a running game, and I feel like bringing in Steve Sarkisian, that's not going to fix it. Steve Sarkisian can't run you the ball. They need to draft a running back. Yeah, they need to draft a running back. All right, bring in a number 2 receiver to play alongside Baldwin, and build up that offensive line for Russell Wilson before they even think about bringing in Steve Sarkisian, because Steve Sarkisian is not going to fix your problems. And as far as the defense goes, I mean, you're going to need another safety since it's looking like Cam Chancellor's not going to be back. You're going to need another defensive lineman since you're not sure if Cliff Avrill's going to be back, and already that defensive line's starting to get old, so you need to start bringing in young players. All right. You got Bobby Wagner, one of the best linebackers in the league. Maybe put some other young players with him, and you need to bring in another corner too. All right. They're not going to be able to obviously fix all these problems in one offseason, but I feel that the defense is where they need to fix up most of the problems, and I think that they'll be safe for another year before they fix up those offensive problems. Because when you got Russell Wilson out there, I mean, he's always going to give that offense a chance to score points. So, I mean, I'm not really too worried about that. They really got to fix the defense, though. And they got to bring in an offensive coordinator that is able to make the most out of what he's got. I don't think Steve Sarkisian can do that. And plus, now here's where the rest of the NFC West comes in. Plus, when you got a team like San Francisco, all right, John Lynch is going to be in his second year as a GM. Kyle Shanahan's going to be in his second year as a head coach. Obviously, they're going to be getting better at their jobs. I mean, they already did well that first year. Then you got the whole issue of, you know what, Jimmy Garoppolo might be the franchise quarterback for the 49ers. I mean, they're going to sign him to a long-term deal, I feel. So, I mean, they're going to have no choice other than making him the franchise quarterback. But you're not sure how much better he can get. Meaning, how do you say? He's still got a bunch of upside. So you're not, like I said, you're just not sure how good he's going to get. He could become one of the best in the league if he wants. He's got the tools to do that. All right, so now you got to worry about the 49ers coming up. Okay, the Arizona Cardinals. They're a team that's just a quarterback away from being in the playoffs yearly, or at least competing for playoffs yearly. All right, they're going to need a new coach. Losing Bruce Arians is probably the biggest hit for that team. But if they hit on this, hit good on this head coaching hire, and are able to bring in a solid quarterback in the draft, or maybe sign a guy like Kirk Cousins. They sign Kirk Cousins. That's a team who's going to be competing for playoffs. All right, and then you got the issue of the LA Rams. Almost said St. Louis. Yeah, you got the LA Rams. Those are Super Bowl contenders for what? The next 5 years, I feel. That's a young team who blew you out at home. Okay, so everyone around them is getting better. I mean, the Cardinals, they have to make a couple of moves in order to stay good, but I mean, the 49ers are getting better, and like I said, the Rams are Super Bowl contenders going forward the next 5 years. It should be. So Seattle really needs to fix up this offseason, fix up that defense, and figure out a way to stay as a favorite in the NFC West and and in the NFL. Because if they don't do that, the 49ers are going to pass them up. All right, we saw this season that the Rams passed them up. Oh, no, yeah, that home blowout loss that they had against the Rams, it wasn't 30-7. It was 42-7, even worse. All right. They lost to a team like the Jaguars, 30-24. Who else? They lost to the Cardinals. Okay, you lost to a team like the Falcons. You lost to the Redskins this year. Who else did you lose to? You lost to the Titans, and you lost to the Packers. All right, the Titans, the Falcons, the Jags, the Rams, those are all up-and-coming teams. Titans, I know the Falcons, they're not up-and-coming team. They're a team that's already good. So I guess the Titans, the Jags, and the Rams, those are up-and-coming teams. And it's looking like those teams passed you up last year. All right. There was one point in time where Seattle was the best team in the NFL. And like I said, you were scared going into Seattle playing a football game there because you knew you pretty much had no chance. Seattle had one of the scariest defenses in the league, and they don't have that anymore, so they really got to fix it up. Otherwise, they're going to be in big trouble. And like I said, I'm not even sure if they're going to be better than the 49ers next year, because the 49ers, they're a couple of moves away from being a team that's competing for playoffs. If Jimmy Garoppolo is able to replicate what he did for those last six games of the season. And I'm sure he's going to be able to, because when you got a guy like Kyle Shanahan out there coaching you, I mean, you're only going to get better. So we'll see, but the Seahawks really You need to fix up the issues on the defense first and foremost. Russell Wilson will help you hide the issues on offense because he's one of the better quarterbacks in the league. Top 5 quarterback for sure. All right. And they need to stay away from Steve Sarkisian and bring in a solid offensive coordinator. So we'll see if they're able to do that. If not, then Seattle's going to be going down soon. So like I said, we'll see. But that's going to wrap it up for the segment. Next up, I'm going to be making my picks for the NBA games going on tonight. Got a bunch of games going on. And we'll pretty much talk about anything else going on in sports. So stay tuned, and we'll be right back.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red-hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's gsmcpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
And welcome back to the GSMC Sports Podcast. And that last segment, we pretty much talked about the Seattle Seahawks firing their offensive coordinator. They might be getting rid of the defensive coordinator, letting him leave. And I saw that they want Steve Sarkisian. I don't understand that. I mean, I'm not sure that they've been paying attention to the Falcons' offense so far this year. But I mean, they got a whole lot. They got bigger problems on the defensive end, on the defensive side of the ball. I talked about how I think that they need to fix up those problems before they even take a look at the offense. I mean, obviously you need to bring in a solid offensive coordinator so you get the most production out of them. I don't think Steve Sarkisian is that guy. Like I said, this year's been kind of shaky for him. But I think if you bring in a solid offensive coordinator, plus you have Russell Wilson who could mask most of those holes that you got on there, and you fix up the defense, you're a playoff team again. So we'll see what they do. But before I started the segment, I was talking with Tate. Again, he's the guy that runs the place. He does the MMA podcast. Check that one out too. And he brought something to my attention that I'm going to be talking about after I make my NBA picks. All right, so let's get into these NBA picks right here. We got the Dallas Mavericks first up, facing off with the Charlotte Hornets. Dallas is on a back-to-back. Hornets, I don't think they didn't play yesterday, so I got the Hornets in this one. Another thing with the Hornets too, it's looking like they might be trading Kemba Walker at the trade deadline. It's looking like they finally realized, you know what? We don't have it this year. We're not going to be a good team. We need to start rebuilding. So watch for Kemba Walker to be leaving the Hornets this season. But I got them beating the Mavericks. Then we got the Miami Heat facing off with the Indiana Pacers. Victor Oladipo's back. Miami's on a back-to-back. I got the Pacers in this one. Oladipo, when the Pacers are out there, or when the Oladipo's out there with the Pacers, that's a 4 or 5 seed in the East right there with no question. So I got them. Then we got the Utah Jazz facing off with the Washington Wizards. Donovan Mitchell is pretty much all of Utah's offense, and I got the Wizards. I'm taking John Wall and Bradley Beal versus them. We got the Detroit Pistons facing off with the Brooklyn Nets. I don't know which way to go with this pick. Detroit is inconsistent. Brooklyn competes, can win on any given day. I'm going to go with, this is tough right here. This is like that one pick. I'm going to get all these other ones right, but this is like this one pick right here. I'm going to go with the Pistons. All right. Right now, the Nets got DeMar Carroll and Allen Crabbe. They're day-to-day, excuse me. Yeah, they're day-to-day. So, I mean, even if they play, they're still playing injured, I feel. So, yeah, I got the Pistons. Don't let me down, Detroit, please. All right, next game. We got the Chicago Bulls facing off with the New York Knicks. Another tough one right here because the Bulls are a young team. The Bulls are what the Kings should be. All right? The Bulls are a young team, really young team. But they're competing. They're able to pull out wins. The Kings, they're a young team, but they don't compete whatsoever. Like I said, Kings should be exactly what the Bulls are, but they're not. But as far as this game goes, I'm going to go with the New York Knicks. They're at home. I trust Kristaps Porzingis against the Bulls. I think they got it. Trailblazers facing off with the Rockets. This is an easy one. Trailblazers are on a back-to-back. Rockets not. I got the Rockets. They're probably going to put up around 124 points in this game. Then you get the New Orleans Pelicans facing off with the Grizzlies. I got the Pelicans even in Memphis. So, yeah, I got the Pelicans winning that one. I think it's going to be a big game from Anthony Davis and DeMarcus Cousins. So, yeah, I'm going with the Pelicans. Then we got the Orlando Magic facing off with the Milwaukee Bucks. I got the Bucks in this one. Magic, just like I said with the Kings right now. They should be what the Bulls are with their young team, competing, playing well, but simply just haven't been able to put it together. So I got the Milwaukee Bucks. Then, we got a nice game on ESPN. I'll be watching this one definitely. We got 2 good games today on ESPN. All right, first game on ESPN. We got the Oklahoma City Thunder facing off with the Minnesota Timberwolves. In Minnesota, this is a tough one. Oklahoma City's on a back-to-back. They didn't play well yesterday. I think they might be able to pick it up. This is a toss-up right here. Who do I want? I'm going to go with Minnesota. They've been playing good basketball. They came off of they had a big win against the Cleveland Cavaliers a couple days ago. I'm going to go with Minnesota. They're the hotter team right there. Yeah, so I got Minnesota beating the Thunder. Let's go Atlanta versus Denver. This isn't the second game on ESPN, thankfully. I got Denver in this one. Denver's been playing well. Gary Harris has been shooting the ball extremely well. He's been playing really well. Then you got Jamal Murray. He's been playing well also. You got Nikolai Jokic, what a good player on the team. And you got Wilson Chandler, who's been consistent player in his NBA career. So I got the Nuggets. And as for the second game on ESPN, we got the LA Clippers facing off with the Golden State Warriors. Obviously, this game would have been fun to watch a couple years ago when Chris Paul was there. I mean, last year Chris Paul was there, but I mean, they never had a shot against the Warriors. But this game, I think it's going to be fun to watch just because you got Lou Williams out there. He's been playing well. All right, you got Blake Griffin back. DeAndre Jordan's been playing well. So all that means Golden State's winning by 10. I got Golden State winning this one. I mean, it's going to be a fun game to watch, but I mean, Golden State's going to be too much for LA to handle, so I got them winning. To recap those picks, I got Charlotte beating the Mavericks, the Pacers beating the Heat, the Wizards beating the Jazz, the Pistons beating the Nets, the Knicks beating the Bulls, the Rockets beating the Trailblazers, the Pelicans beating the Grizzlies, the Bucks beating the Magic, the Timberwolves beating the Thunder, the Nuggets beating the Hawks, and, like I said, the Warriors beating the Clippers. All right, so let me tell you guys about what me and Tate talked about before the segment started. If everything works out, we could have two NFL championship games, meaning AFC, NFC championship games. Okay, with the 4 quarterbacks being Tom Brady, who hasn't been playing well. All right, if you don't believe me, don't yell at me. Go check the stats. All right, Tom Brady is not what he once was. Go check. Don't get mad at me. Don't shoot the messenger. I'm just letting you know. All right, so yeah. Like, depending on how he plays, I guess. If he goes out and destroys the Titans, then, I mean, it really doesn't matter. All right, so we got Tom Brady. How about Blake Bortles? How about Nick Foles? How about Case Keenum? Beginning of the season, no one thought that would happen. I definitely didn't. All right. Who was? Oh, yeah, Sam Bradford. Sam Bradford was the Minnesota Vikings quarterback at the beginning of the year. That's why Case Keenum, man. The Vikings have 3, you should say, competent quarterbacks. They're going to lose one, Case Keenum, because I think that they should make Teddy Bridgewater the starter. You get to trade Sam Bradford to a young team who drafts a quarterback problem and doesn't want him to jump right into it. You trade him, you could get a 2nd-round pick for Sam Bradford, maybe 3rd-round pick. 2nd-round pick might be too high because of his injury history, but man, now I'm even thinking about it. But yeah, just imagine the championship games in both respective conferences. You got Brady versus Bortles, maybe, by some chance, Mariota versus Bortles. And the next one you could have Keenum versus Foles. Obviously, I know the NFL, they're going to want Brady versus Roethlisberger, and they're going to want Breeze versus Ryan. I mean, that's what's best for ratings. But just imagine, I mean, if we got Case Keenum versus Nick Foles and Blake Bortles versus Tom Brady or Marcus Mariota, imagine how crazy that would be. I think let's do some hypotheticals right here, some ifs. All right, let's say if the Titans beat the Patriots, Jags beat the Steelers, Eagles beat the Vikings, or Eagles beat the Falcons, and the Vikings beat the beat the Saints. You know who your Super Bowl champion is? The Vikings. If that was to happen somehow, Vikings are going to win the Super Bowl, and they're going to win it at home too. I really hope Minnesota gets to the Super Bowl so they get to play it at home. I'm not sure if a team has really ever played a Super Bowl at their home stadium. Let me see if I can pull it up before the show is over. But yeah, that'd be fun to see, especially with Case Keenum. Like I said, I mean, talked about him in the first segment a lot. Talked about what does Minnesota do if you missed it. I mean, pretty much talked about how, as far as that goes, like if they were to win the Super Bowl, I'm still making Teddy Bridgewater my starting quarterback next year because I don't want to pay. Like if Case Keenum wins the Super Bowl, you're going to have to give him 4 years, all right? At least. That's a 30-year-old quarterback you're giving 4 years to at least. And he wins the Super Bowl. I was saying 12 to 15, but that's only if he plays well. I mean, if he wins the Super Bowl, then that's 22 mil right there, 20 to 22. All right, only 2 teams have reached the Super Bowl hosted in their home market. The San Francisco 49ers are played at Stanford, and the Rams played at the Rose Bowl instead of the Coliseum. So no team has ever played at their true home stadium. Okay, the 49ers, they played at Candlestick, and the Rams, back when they used to be in LA before they were now, obviously, before they were in St. Louis, played at the Rose Bowl and used to play at the Coliseum, where they play now. So Minnesota would be the first team to play at their true home stadium. That'd be pretty crazy and pretty fun to watch for them, because I know like Minnesota has great fans. They're loud. They're crazy. They're always at the games. All right, and just imagine, I mean, playing Super Bowl in front of your home crowd. I mean, that's the ultimate home field advantage right there. But, I mean, we got to wait and see. But, yeah, just imagine, like I said, we got Marcus Mariota versus Blake Bortles. And then we got, just imagine that right there. Imagine the laughingstock division of the NFL. The AFC South for the last few years has been the laughingstock. Imagine if we get 2 teams from the AFC South in the AFC Championship game. That would be crazy. Who knows? Maybe we will, maybe we won't. I mean, I haven't made my picks or anything like that. I like to think about it during the week, so I have the most time to think about it and pretty much be sure about a pick. I mean, right now, if I'm being honest, I'm leaning with obviously the Patriots beating the Titans. I'm probably going to stick with that one. Right now, I'm kind of torn on the Jaguars and Steelers game right now. And this all comes down to, like I said, if Jacksonville's smart, if they'll put Jalen Ramsey on Juju Smith-Schuster and A.J. Boye on Antonio Brown. All right? Because, like I said, Antonio Brown's not going to be at 100%. Don't waste Jalen Ramsey on him. All right? A.J. Boye is good enough to cover less than 100% Antonio Brown and limit him. Acting like that torn calf muscle won't already. All right? You put Jalen Ramsey on Juju Smith-Schuster. Juju Smith-Schuster's taken out of the game. I'll take Jalen Ramsey over any wide receiver in any of these playoff games. I'll take Jalen Ramsey over, let's go team by team, over Brandon Cooks, over Chris Hogan. You already know that. All right, I'll take him over less than 100% Antonio Brown. I'll take him over Juju Smith-Schuster. I'll definitely take him over Martavis Bryant. Head over to the NFC. I'll take him over Alshon. Definitely take him over Torrey Smith, over Nelson Aguilar. I'll take him over Adam Thielen, Stephon Diggs. I'll take him over Michael Thomas. I'll take him over Ted Ginn. And you know what? I'll take him over Julio Jones, and I'll take him over Mohamed Sanu. Whoever Jalen Ramsey covers, whether it be in the divisional round, if they make it to the AFC Championship, or the Super Bowl, he's going to lock down whoever he's covering. So like I said, that's why I'm putting him on Juju Smith-Schuster. But we're going to have to wait and see if Jacksonville's going to want to do that. They should. They should be smart enough to, but like I said, we'll have to wait and see. I'm torn on the whole Jacksonville and Pittsburgh pick because it's all going to come down to Jacksonville. If they're going to win, they need Blake Bortles to play average. That's it. Just don't play bad. Pittsburgh does not have a solid secondary by any means. So, like I said, I feel like that secondary is going to lock down one of the receivers if they put Ramsey on Smith-Schuster. Le'Veon Bell's going to be limited because that Jacksonville front seven is disgusting. So Blake Bortles just has to play average. Don't throw interceptions. Maybe get a touchdown or 2. They do that, they're good. But we're going to have to wait and see about it now. I'm not making my pick yet. Just giving you my thoughts. We'll be making the pick on Friday's show, so stick around for that one. Let's see. I mean, Philly and Atlanta, it's going to come down to Philly's defense limiting Julio Jones and Devontae Freeman, and Nick Foles pretty much just not playing poorly. That's it. If Nick Foles could come out and play good, then Philly has all the chance in the world to beat Atlanta. Still not sure about that pick. And as far as the Minnesota and Saints game goes, right now I'm leaning towards Minnesota. All right, I'm sure they watched the Carolina game last week, saw what it takes to limit Kamara and Ingram. And the biggest part is that they have a secondary better than Carolina. So, I mean, you're not going to have Ted Ginn running all over the place, catching the ball. All right, and Michael Thomas is a top 3 receiver for me. You're going to be able to limit him too some. And obviously, if it's just Michael Thomas producing, then you have all the chance in the world to win. So we'll see how it all ends up. But that's actually going to wrap it up for today's show. Like I said, first segment we talked about the whole what do the Vikings do next season? Do they start Case Keenum or do they start Teddy Bridgewater? I said start Teddy Bridgewater. We talked about the NBA games from last night. In the third segment, we talked about Seattle, them firing their offensive coordinator and possibly letting their defensive coordinator go, what they need to do in the offseason. Stay away from Steve Sarkisian, Pete Carroll, please. And pretty much gave a little outlook for the San Francisco 49ers, the Cardinals, and the Rams too, because I mean that all affects Seattle in a way also, since they all play in the same division. And then for this segment, I made my picks for the games going on today in the NBA, and we talked a little about the playoffs and talked about the possibility of a Tom Brady / Marcus Mariota. Let's go Marcus Mariota, Blake Bortles, Case Keenum, Nick Foles, championship games. I mean, that would be terrible for ratings, but that's what we talked about. That's why I like doing the fourth segment, because it pretty much talk about whatever comes to mind, you know? But like I said, that's going to wrap it up for today's show. We'll be back tomorrow. Thanks for listening to the GSMC Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Jesse Tapia. Stay tuned, and we'll talk to you later.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.